Hi, so my name is Nassim. I work at Etsy, and it's me right there in the truck. My team name is called Autobots, and that was last Halloween party. We're all dressed up. But when we don't transform, we maintain the build and the test infrastructure for Etsy.com and for the iOS and Android app. So before I start, how many of you guys have had one of these in their hands? The AOL Get Online CDs? That was like 20 years ago, right? Now let me ask you, how many of you push a new version of their website at least once a day? Well, okay, some people. Once a week, maybe? All right, that's more like it. At Etsy, we deploy in average 50 times a day. And consistently, since 2010, we deploy all the time. We don't set it as a goal. It's just our workflow. That's how we work. Our ability to deploy anytime in less than 15 minutes is critical. Actually, one of our engineer puts it this way. Not being in a state to deploy is a matter of liability. It's like having the only fire exit blocked. You ignore it at everyone's peril. Sweet. That's Lacey from the iOS team. So we've gone such a long way in 20 years from shipping CDs to putting out a new version by clicking a button. By the way, we have an Android and an iOS app. And today I'm very pleased to introduce the Etsy app version 4.0. Freshly pressed by the Apple Store. Actually, I'm joking. We released it 2 weeks ago. But you get the point. Mobile apps are released the same way the AOL CDs were released 20 years ago. Actually, if you think about it, it may even be slower. As of September 2014, it took an average of 6 days to get an iOS app reviewed. In 6 days, you can push 300 changes or 500 changes on your web stack, but you're going to get one new version out. All right, so we don't have control on the deployment process, deployment process. But we can still apply the same principles that we believe in. CI, continuous integration. No, let's get it on for apps. We need the ability to detect defects as soon as they're introduced. We also need quick feedback loop on the code we're writing. So let's strive to release constantly, although not necessarily to our customers. So if you believe that if the code is not out there, it's not teaching you anything. If you believe in making a lot of small changes often, and if you believe that the sooner you detect a bug, the cheaper it is to fix, well, there you have it. That's the magic bullet of CI, the cultural aspect. Tools will emerge naturally to support your goals. Now, when I started at Etsy, I was working on the site, and I started 2 years ago. Etsy was already deploying 50 times a day. I was like, oh, wait, that's great, that's amazing. And then I started to work on the apps about a year ago, and that was not exactly the same story. There wasn't anything. That was the apps landscape 3 years ago. But we already had that culture of deploying all the time. We already had that will, so it was kind of easy. Tools grew up around us to support us. And that's where we are right now. And that's also the outline of today's presentation. That's the tools I'm going to talk about. So until last year, our builds was still done by a developer on his machine. There was a real ceremony that usually was going on Fridays and ended up with a beer. Releasing an app should not be called for a celebration. Like, it should be very, very boring. And the only way to make that boring and horribly predictable is to automate it. So that's really the cornerstone of CI, automate your build. And by the way, command line or it does not count. If you want to develop on iOS or on Android, you need an IDE, but it would be a terrible idea to have a script that would go click your GUI everywhere. Or even worse, let Xcode do it for you, for instance. Well, thankfully, it's actually pretty easy to build with a command line. Matt Thompson created a very handy Ruby gem called Shenzhen. So that's for iOS. It can build, package, and distribute your app. That's pretty awesome. This command can build the Etsy app and release it. So let me tell you a story. Like, once upon a time, not too long ago actually, we shipped the wrong app to the Apple Store. That sounds crazy, but we actually did it. We built the app from the release branch, sent it to TestFlight, which is a beta testing platform, and did all our QA. And that was great. Built it again and sent it to the Apple Store. Except the second time, it was built from master. So we validated the release branch and pushed master to the Apple Store. So we had the postmortem. And what came out of it is instead of doing this 2 times building, we build once and we package twice. One for TestFlight and one for the Apple Store. This way, what you're sending to Apple is the same stuff you tried with TestFlight. I know it sounds stupid, but we got bit by it. So that was a remediation item. CI has a lot of principles. If you haven't read Martin Fowler's article, go check it out. But one of them is every commit should build the main line. So the main line for us is master, and we work with Git. And so since we know how to build with the command line, all you have to do is to hook it up to a CI system, continuous integration server. So how many of you are using Xcode bots, the robots? Or is anyone using the Xcode bots? All right. Well, I feel the same way. We use Jenkins. We keep the provisioning profiles in the repository so that anyone can update them when they need it. You don't need to go download them or do this kind of stuff. And we build all the targets. That's very critical for iOS. Now, if you use Jenkins, you probably agree that the UI is kind of cluttered, kind of crappy and cluttered. But you can fix it. And our way of enhancing it is to use the Groovy Post Build plugin that would display here, in this case, the versions besides the build number, the versions of the app we just built, so that you don't need to go dig into the Jenkins everywhere, find the links to know what you built. So we build on push, and we can detect whenever the build is broken. And that's great. Now we can sit back and relax. Or you have office hackers in-house, and they can do this kind of stuff with Nintendo lamps that we found on Etsy. And we added some hue lights that we can control with an API. And now when the build is broken, you have a red lamp. When it's green, well, the lamp is green. And there is even like a disco mode that which flash through the different colors. That's just to have fun on IRC, but it works. How many of you have had growing anger against provisioning profiles? All right. Well, we all share that, right? So if you don't know what a provisioning profile is, it's a collection of digital entities that enable a device to be used for testing. Long story short, you need it if you want to develop on iOS, and it's a pain, period. It's a big pain. And one of the reasons why it's a pain is if you let Xcode manage it for you. So as a developer, let me show you where the magic happens, right there. You enter your account settings into Xcode, and then Xcode is going to do magic. It's going to try to auto-resolve everything for you and download the files from the Apple website and do everything for you. It works mostly great when you're a developer, but in CI, that's a recipe for disaster. And that was really the most important takeaway for us, to solve all the provisioning profile issues on the continuous integration machines, delete them from the accounts. You should not configure any account settings on the CI machines. No magic on CI. We want predictable builds. And so just to quote the Zen of Python, principle number 2, explicit is better than implicit. That means that also applies to provisioning profiles. So when you build, specify your identity and the profile you want to embed. Simple, but very effective. Now, the full sentence about building every commit on the mainline goes like this. Every commit should build the mainline on an integration machine, the integration machine. So our first integration machine was a Mac Mini, and we really babysitted it. Like, we really cared for it. That was the growl. And it was like, we really need to take care of it. All the bits were going through it. But soon enough, we had to grow our capacity. And so we now have 25 Mac Minis. We use Chef extensively at Etsy. And so naturally, we turned to Chef to provision the Mac Minis. And we use Homebrew and Ruby. And for the most part, it works great, except that the base image that we use for Mac Minis does not include Xcode. That means we need to install Xcode with Chef. And Xcode wants you to click everywhere, which again is a big pain. So it's not exactly smooth the first time we run it, but we're getting there. If you guys have pro tips on how you solve that problem, find me. I'm really interested. We chef everything to the build machines. That's the iOS certificates, the signing identities, and the whole Android toolset. So pretty much any time you need the SDK manager to install anything on Android, we chef it out to the build machine. The golden rule is to never manually install anything onto the build machine, or actually never interact with it. Jenkins is allowed to interact with it. A developer should never have to interact with the build machine. Well, of course, we sometimes break that rule, but we really try hard not to. Commit to the mainline every day. All right, that means commit to master every day. No way. Well, actually, yes way. That means branch in code and push to master. And the idea is to integrate new changes as early as possible. At Let's See, we don't really believe in branch development. That's actually a big taboo, branching at Let's See. And we prefer to integrate small changes all the time on master over feature branches or development on branches. That's valid on the web stack, and we are porting this to the apps. So to give you an example, the Etsy app 4.0 that I mentioned earlier, that's actually a major redesign of the iPhone app. We started with this old iPhone app, then we built the iPad app that was new layout, new fancy, cool stuff. But we still had the old iPhone app that we wanted to port over. Well, that took 6 months. Can you imagine developing on a feature branch for 6 months? That's just, no, I can't. That's, again, recipe for disaster. So you just branch in the code. You start with your old boring controller, and you branch it with an if statement, and that's it. You check if the reskin is enabled. That's how we call that flag. And then you have different ways of controlling that reskin enable flagged. You either have it in a property list, and then you just hook it up to your settings in your phone. And this way, with this switch, you can say, well, enable the reskin or not. Or you can even push it further. The way Twitter does is you have it on the server. And you just check your server config. And so your app is going to query your main server, retrieving the configuration settings, and then act on it. And then you can do really cool stuff, like turning on a feature, or enabling a feature just for the staff, or ramping up a feature to 5% of the users. So there is a lot you can do with those feature flags. Now, it comes at a cost, for sure. Some people would say that you have code mess, and who is doing the cleanup? Well, we have also those problems on the web stack. And we haven't seen them yet on iOS, maybe because we just started, probably so. But we are very happy to pay that price for feature development. We also have some other problems to deal with, like detecting that a flag changed. How often are you going to query your server to check if the config changed? Some things in the apps are way too stateful to be tracked with a server-side config. Like if you want to redraw the whole app, for instance, that's probably a very bad idea. So currently, we just check when the app launches and when someone logs in, logs out. But we want to fine-tune that process. So we're just starting there on that space. And well, I'll let you know how it goes. And if you have, again, success stories on that front, share with everyone. All right, so we all push to master. Now, does it mean that master is always broken? Well, we do code reviews. And we try to code review everything, at least on the apps. And the way it works is you have a command line tool called review. And in that case, I'm asking myself, that's probably a very bad idea, but I'm copying the whole iOS team to review my changes. Velocity demo, also a very terrible title. Probably pick something different. But that would open, that's going to create a pull request on GitHub and attach an issue to it and notify whoever you specify in the reviewer and the CC list. And then from GitHub, Jenkins is going to be notified, hey, I have a new request pending. And Jenkins is going to kick a build and the linter and the test with that pull request, with that review. And once it's done, it's going to come back and comment back onto your issue with the status of all the Jenkins jobs. This way, the reviewer can just focus on really the code there, and Jenkins is going to add some extra information for it. That's pretty damn effective, and it saves a lot of time. Do or do not. There is no try. Well, actually, there is a try, and we borrowed it from our web stack. Try is a script that lets you test your changes onto the CI cluster. So how does it work? Well, simply, from the repository on your local machine, it's going to do a git diff origin master, generate a patch file, send it over to Jenkins, and then Jenkins is going to take care of it. It's going to distribute your patch across, say, 4 Mac minis, and run the build, lint, run the unit test, the functional test, and then report back. Kind of looks like this. I don't know if you can see with the colors, but in this case, the linter failed, but the unit test passed, and the build passed on the CI cluster. So right now, it means that if I were to push, I would break the build and piss off everyone. So when you have either the review or you have the try script that you can use to make sure your changes are not going to break everyone. Pretty effective and open sourced. Now, of course, the best way to check your app and build confidence is through testing, the beloved unit test. Well, it's... Oops, we lost a screen there. Hello. Hi. We're back, mostly. It's no surprise that legacy code and testing don't really go hand in hand. You design your code to be testable, and sometimes it can be a bit challenging to retrofit the code onto a legacy code base. So that means refactoring work. But as we all know, feature development is greater than unit testing. Less than a year ago, we had 0 tests, 0 unit tests. That's where we were. We have more now. The ball is rolling. We're getting there. And there are multiple techniques to get there. Some companies would, for instance, assign the developer every sprint to just write tests and refactor the code to be testable and write tests. Every sprint, you have a new developer taking care of this. So the whole team is really paying the technical debt and adding tests. We have not tried that yet, but I think it's a really cool idea. What we've tried is what we call testing dojos. Collaborative, non-competitive, learning-focused coding experience. So what the hell is that? Quite simply, you take 6 developers, 1 computer with 1 projector, and 3 minutes to code, and then you rotate. And it's really 3 minutes. You put the timer, once the 3 minutes are up, you're out. Someone else is in. And the goal is to solve one simple testing objective. And so this kind of helps everyone to get on board and demystify the process of writing tests and discussing in person how to design your code to really be testable and really agree on the different philosophy. Everyone gets on board, and it's fun. You get to learn a lot, so that this way, when you go back to your desk to write some code, well, you're going to have all the thoughts in mind, and you're going to write better code. So that has worked really well for us. Well, actually, the first test we did a year ago was not even a unit test. It was a functional test. They actually really test the user experience behind the app. So how many of you are doing functional testing for apps? OK, quite a few people. I personally think that it's pretty awesome and magical. Like, I'm blown away every time. I read a lot of tests, but every time it just gets me. It's like the UI is clicked, the button are pressed, and the text is entered, and listings and items are being purchased. It's awesome. And they can catch a lot of stuff, like this screen that shouldn't be there anymore, but true bug. So they're really awesome, but they are quite a piece of work. You have a lot of framework to work with, Calabash, Appium, Frank. We use Calabash at Etsy. But whichever framework you pick, save yourself time and go straight with what we call the page object model, which is design pattern really well established for functional tests. You don't need it to write your tests, but you may end up with a spaghetti ball of tests if you don't. And that's what happened to us. We had a bunch of tests. We ended up scratching them all and rewriting them with the page object model. As far as testing, where do you run your tests? Well, we found that running the tests in-house for simulators worked great, especially for iOS. For Android, we're still tweaking our strategy there. It's a bit more challenging. There is a lot more emulators, and they're very slow. As far as testing on devices, don't even try. I mean, it's just a nightmare. It's a full-time job to just maintain those devices. So we personally outsource it. We use a company called AppTalk. They have 300 devices that we can choose from, and we have 4 dedicated iOS devices, 4 Android. And when the phone is broken, when it needs an update, even when the test fails sometimes, they get in touch with us. We get in touch with them, and we can fix it. They fix it for us. All we do is feed the test through an API, get the results. They do the maintenance. It's really win-win for us. Now, 300 devices is quite a bit of devices and a lot of tests to run, so you need visibility to see what's going on. So you just put a dashboard on it. That's what our dashboard looks like. It's mostly green, and then we have a gradient going from red to green, and we're very happy with greenish. The whole idea is 100% of functional test passing all the time is just an illusion. It's not going to happen. So greenish is OK. Red is probably broken. So tests can catch a lot of things, but not everything. And that's when you dog food. You use your app internally. We actually cannot release an app every day to the Apple Store, but you can do it internally to your users. And so we have 2 apps at Etsy. We have the blue pill, which is the enterprise app, and then we have the orange pill. That's the public app. And then we tag the version of the current enterprise build onto the app, onto the little icon. And so if you want to download that app, you just go to etsy.com/appbuilds, assign it as an employee, as an admin, and then you can download the build. Make it easy to download the latest build. And while you're at it, make it easy to detect a change and download the latest version. Prompt the user to install the latest build. One thing we do at Etsy is called support rotation. And the idea is everyone, including our CEO, Chad, would regularly take 2 hours and answer support emails sent by the community. Everyone at Etsy does it. We modify the experience to the apps world. So we don't have a big QA team for apps. We have 4 apps and 3 QA person. But we have a lot of employees. We have 650 employees, so we're pretty big there with a lot of different devices. So we just change the support rotation into app rotations. And the way it works is you take 8 volunteers in the room, take a QA facilitator, and a mix of devices. I didn't put it here, but usually if you add beer or pizza or chocolate, it works great. And then you try to find as many bugs as you can in an hour. The thing is, with a mix of users with different habits, you get a lot more bugs. People use the app differently. If you take the same QA engineer to find always the same bugs, odds are he's not going to use the app the same way than someone else. So you can get a lot more bugs this way. And besides, it's really fun. Like, people are having fun finding those bugs and competing with each other, trying to find as many bugs as they can. So that's something we do about twice a week, and it works great. But you really want feedback all the time. That's the idea behind continuous delivery and continuous integration. Give me the feedback as soon as I push my code. So to that effect, we created a little program that we call Bug Hunt. Gamified, focused testing. So if I tell you, hey, there is a new release of the app, go test it out. Go find me some bugs. All right, where do I start? And it's pretty vague. I don't even know what changed. And that's what Bug Hunt is trying to fit. Like, give you a test scenario, and the way it looks is just a new set of screens in the internal app where you can see the test tasks. So the QA engineer is going to feed a test scenario in a backend system. So we use Jira. They just open a Jira ticket, and then they put a little test scenario at a Twitter, very short and daring. Like, hey, we rewrote convos. Can you break it? All right, yeah, I'm going to break it. I know you have bugs there. Let me break it. And so you go start using the app, and you have this little red button that is overlaid on the enterprise app. You press it, a short click, it takes a snapshot, and a long click is going to open up the bug hunt screen where you can enter details about the bug, and then all the usual stuff, collect device information and all things, hit submit, and boom, a Jira ticket is created. It's pretty simple, very effective, and you don't even have to open your mail app and take a regular screenshot by pressing 2 buttons. And then when you're done, you can go check your score and compare yourself with how many other admins found bugs. So that's the gaming aspect. So we just started with this bug hunt that came out of a Hack Week, and we think it's going to work. And if you think you're interested, we actually just open sourced it today. It's a CocoaPod for iOS. So feel free to go play with it and let us know how it works out for you. All right, now let's just imagine that one day, someday, hopefully, that we could push a change and have it live on our users' devices in less than 15 minutes. That sounds crazy. That's nonsense, crazy talk today. But maybe that's how releasing 50 times a day sounded back in the 90s. We were there and see where we are for the websites. So we're just starting this journey for the apps. So now it's your turn to really start your journey. You can start simple and easy. Try to package your app without Xcode, just from the command line. Try to organize a test dojo and see what comes out of it. Try to write a functional test, and you'll be able to detect a lot of crashes, especially if you run them on push. Or be wild and try to build all your reviews automatically on the CI cluster. It's all up to you. In any case, if you have any questions on any of this, I'll be there to help. I have office hours tomorrow at 11:20 a.m. on table 2. That's it for my talk. Please send your feedback and rate the session so we can make it better. And I'm going to switch to questions, but you may have this question of, what about Android? Well, we do use the exact same tools on Android and for iOS, but there is a lot more things we want to do on Android, and we need help, so we're hiring. If you want to hack on this, come find me, and there is a lot to be done here. Thank you very much.
All right. Hi.
Hi.
On the one hand, you're talking about push as the developer checks in his code and run the build, right? Mm-hmm. And on the other end, you want that each build will come straight to the device. So I think to myself that as a user, I wouldn't like to get an update notification in my iPhone each time, your build is running.
So the update notification we're talking about is this type of pop-up, right? Those are very annoying. But again, that's today. What we have to deal with this.
That's only for your internal deploys.
And that's for the internal deploys. With the public deploys, you have auto-update. So that's pretty new. And maybe, who knows, like in a month, a year, there wouldn't be this restriction for the internal deploys. Who knows? So that's my dream, that we could push in 15 minutes and have it live. I don't know if it's going to happen.
Hi. So you mentioned that your tests are only partially green on the functional tests. I'm wondering if that's flaky tests, brittle tests, bad tests. What is causing all that?
A bit of all of the above, pretty much. Yeah, put simply, that's a bit of all of the above. Tests that are poorly designed, network, timeouts. Someone that used the test account and changed settings there. And sometimes it's just flaky because, as Jen mentioned in the previous talk, it just doesn't work as reliably as on the web stack for the with Selenium test, for instance.
Also, what about with the 4 Android devices you have? How you don't really have much coverage with that in terms of older devices or presumably older API levels, different locales, different orientations, screen sizes, all of that, right? So
we
you're planning to
definitely
address
do
that?
not. We definitely do not have enough coverage on Android. And the slide of the we're hiring slide. Seriously.
You talked about constantly pushing to master and keeping master update. In our organization, the main, where we struggle with that is doing QA. There's like a lag. Do you address that with the feature switch, with the ability to turn it on and off easily? Does that take care of that?
So we always start development by writing a switch. And then the big thing I see is we really don't believe in having a QA team to do your QA. And so it's the developer responsibility to do the QA. And that's on the web stack, and that's what we're trying to port to the apps. And I know it's kind of controversial and not seen this way in a lot of places, and that's how I was before. But we really don't want to build a wall between there's a QA folks and there's a developer. As a developer, you own your changes, you test your changes. It's not necessarily realistic with all the device sizes and everything, but at least that's what we're shooting for. But we always start with a feature flag, indeed.
How you doing? Have you considered gated check-ins at all?
What do you mean by that?
Gated check-ins by the check-in goes into a shelved area. It has to compile, run your tests, even before it gets up to progress to your mainline?
No. No, and mostly again because we pretty much copied what we were doing on the web stack, and there is no such things as gated check-ins. It's the developer responsibility to take his change and push it to prod. If you break it, you own it, you fix it. But there would never be someone to say, yes, you're good to go, or no, your changes is not making it. As a developer, you really own your changes. Again, that's a control aspect that may be different and that may be hard. I definitely had a hard time at first with it, but it actually works. For us, anyway.
So Bug Hunt is only for devs, right? Have you considered having some version of it for users?
Yes, we just started with it, so we'll see if we can roll it out to bigger test groups. Just like this, TestFlight is coming out for beta testers, so there's going to be a lot we can do hopefully with it. We haven't experimented with it, but having this type of bug hunt reporting would be good. So stay tuned.
Cool.
Just a quick opinion question. With your anti-branching approach, how would you feature like a large feature going into your main line that is likely going to break, all your unit tests, your functional tests? It's going to be a large amount of work, and it's most likely going to break things. So it's going to be a little bit brittle. How would you handle that without branching?
Well, if you start small, that huge feature that you're talking about, at some point is going to be very small at the very start. And so if you branch then and continuously put it into your testing, into master and test on it, then you'll be fine. It's really to avoid having two branches really diverging and then having to reconcile with them. That's where the problem comes. So hence the branching really in the code to avoid this type of issue. Does it make sense? Or?
So basically break it down is what you're saying, and then do small chunks.
Yeah, and that's the idea behind continuous delivery. It's very small changes very often. We don't want big changes that are very hard to QA and to inspect. So,
right. Thanks.
All right, any more questions? Okay, let's thank Nassim again.